Hello everyone and welcome to the CEO Roundtable. I know everyone there on LinkedIn has been waiting for this for months. My name is Sheppard and I'm so happy to be here today at the Impact Studios in partnership with Wesley Conference Centre. Thank you, Wesley Conference Centre in the city centre. Why are we here? You're probably pondering. Well, we're on a mission. We've got a brand new mission and we're here to catalyse a global shift to responsible leadership by 2035. Give me a woo at home. Woo! I could hear you from here. Thank you very, very much. And today, I've got some top CEOs, some incredibly responsible leaders, sharing some of their thoughts, some of their insights, and some of their tips about what we need to do over the next 10 years to become a responsible leader. So, let's begin. Allison Rossiter, say hello to the people at home.
Hello.
We've got Luli Adeyemo.
Hello.
And we've got Ian Wood.
Hello, hello.
So we don't do boring at Bambuddha Group. We like to just shake things up and make them a bit more human, because I don't know about you, but some of these corporate gigs can get a bit boring. So I thought I'd jump in straight into the deep end and ask each one of you to confess one of your most hilarious leadership mishaps. Didn't expect that, did you? Yeah, like literally, you're going to need to share this.
Oh, dear.
You'd like to go?
Allison? Oh, no?
I think I've got two. One's a bit more serious. One is funny. One I actually was presenting on stage where I was able to stand up and pace. And as I was walking towards the stage, I picked up something on the floor and I split my trousers to the point that the whole back of the trousers was split. And so when I was on stage, even though I had all this space to walk up and down, I was stood like this the whole time because I couldn't turn around.
Wow, very well covered up. Did you just kind of shimmy off like...
Just shimmy off.
Just made it like, this is the way I roll.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would you like to hand that hot potato over to?
It's going to be like this, isn't it?
Okay, then right, I'll go next. So mine, not so much hilarious, but I gave too much autonomy. In one of my former roles, leadership roles, I gave autonomy or the team thought I gave more autonomy than I did. Let's put it that way. So I made decisions and I was away and they made decisions.
Oh.
That's all we'll say.
Oh, but
That's all we'll say.
Wow, okay. So what was the lesson from that?
Be very clear on the autonomy.
Yeah.
Set guardrails and boundaries and then you'll be okay.
Word on the street is clear is kind.
I think that's exactly the right word.
So who's left?
I think I might have been given too much autonomy as a young leader. So one thing about me is, and my friends know, I don't get hangovers. Fact. I don't know what happens. I process alcohol very well. I do not get hangovers. So it was one of my first big leadership roles, and we were away overseas with the team, and we all went out for dinner, and then we went out for drinks afterwards. And I thought it'd be fun if we all had shots. So had the whole team doing shots, and then the next morning I've got no team. Everyone's hungover in bed, and we're meant to be signing up for a big conference. So I learned early that
alcohol doesn't work.
That's not responsible leadership.
No, definitely not.
It was a long day.
I think we started on some nice responsible leadership vulnerability there. I really like that. So the reality of it is, leadership isn't easy. It's really challenging. We're all humans, and we have to make difficult decisions, and we have to learn the ways we go through. But the aim is not to get cancelled while you're doing it. We want to learn, be gracious and compassionate to ourselves as well. But let's get things started, because we've got some juicy topics on the table today. And if we think about lessons learned, 2024, 23, really since COVID's been a little bit crazy out there. What's one leadership lesson from the last year that you believe will define success for you in this next chapter?
Oh, goodness me.
I can go. If
Yeah.
For me, it's about change. Change is inevitable. And so we have to embrace it and go with it, or we've got to change ourselves and do something else. We can't sit there and complain about it. We've got to take it by the horns or move on and change ourselves in another way. But it's coming, whether you like it or you don't. That's my biggest lesson.
And what kind of, have you got any examples of where that change has really, what kind of changes kind of really made you realise that the change is coming?
I decided to change companies after a long time in the same company, 22 years in the same role, or the same company, different roles. And actually, you underestimate how much you have a sense of belonging to that organisation. And it was my choice to leave. I wanted a different challenge. And it's almost like leaving a marriage and going to a different partner or something like that. It's a similar feeling, I think. And so, yeah, don't underestimate how big change is. But it's also really, once you get used to the new idea, it's really exciting and you embrace it and you go forward, and there's some really good things that it's not your everyday normal, so you don't appreciate all the good things that are out there. The change isn't bad. Change is exciting, but you've got to have the right mindset to embrace it.
It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Ian?
I agree with your point on change, actually. I think really successful leaders of the future will be those that can really step up and lead their teams through huge periods of change. We work in a very volatile world, and those who can inspire and engage their team throughout this change are going to be the real successful leaders. You know, we work in a world that's, we'll talk about a little bit later about flexible working, so not everyone is always present in the office. We're all now very used to virtual ways of working. We all have at least 1 or 2 virtual calls a day, I'm sure. That on top of the kind of volatility of the world we live and work in, I think it's going to be really important that leaders are great at managing change, but also great at building connections. And those who can really show empathy, can be open and honest, and keep the people in their teams at the forefront of their decision-making process, I think they're going to be the ones that are really successful when it comes to leadership in the future.
Yeah, amazing, because change isn't easy, is it? It's like the one thing that's inevitable, but it's the one thing as humans we're just absolutely terrible at. We just really don't like change. We're creatures of habit.
I think just to add to that, I agree with what everybody said already, but I think recognising that people are doing it tough at the moment, and sometimes their reactions have got nothing to do with you. And I think, we work with, within the organisation, but with different stakeholder groups, different client groups. And it's hard for people a lot of the time. And, we all go through personal stuff and no one's immune to that. And I think, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the past year or so, and I try to share with my team, is that, that reaction isn't, and sometimes it's not, the reaction is so extreme. So what, to your point, empathy, compassion can we show to the person that's going through that tough time so they feel it's safe enough to have a conversation so that we can work together in a more harmonious way.
I think that's such an interesting response, Luli. And when I speak to a lot of leaders and we think about empathy and how we use that in the workplace, sometimes we forget about ourselves as CEOs and leaders. How do you actually, the same pour from an empty cup and whatnot. But well-being is well and truly on the agenda and on the table now for CEOs as well. Like, how are you looking after yourself so that you can have the space and capacity and emotional ability and availability to look after people properly? Because when you're being squeezed from every direction, we always say kind and responsible leadership isn't just when it's easy to be, it's actually when it's hard to be. That's when it really shows up. So, we'll come on to that a little bit more down the line, but like I said, responsible leadership is about making decisions today that benefit society and the environment tomorrow. How can you stay focused on the long-term impact while navigating these short-term pressures?
Yeah. It's one of my frustrations is the how often that doesn't happen. Everybody wants the quick win. It's kind of, there's not the long-term strategy. We do a lot of work in the diversity, equity and inclusion space. And the message I'm always saying, this isn't a quick fix. Obviously there's a lot of conversation around it at the moment. But there has to be a commitment to, this is a 5-10 year strategy. These are the things that we can do and achieve along the way. But we can't expect it's all going to happen in year one. And I think that's what happens. We're in a society where everything needs to be immediate. It happens. People haven't got the patience and the commitment for time to get the outcomes that are necessary and they're looking for. So I think as leaders, we have to have that sort of a narrative around expectation around what we can do now, but the goal, the longer term goal, is this. And I think, we have to start talking like that more often.
I agree with you, and it's linking back to that change as well. Change takes time, and takes people time to get on board and practice what the future will look like. So we need quick wins because we need momentum. We need to bring the money in the door or whatever it is that we need to achieve. But we need the longer term goal as well to get on this journey. The only time things happen really fast are typically in a pandemic. Everything changes overnight. That's the only time that, certainly in my life, I can think of where something happens so fast. The work from home, I remember that. Before the pandemic, people, certainly in the office I was in, they were freaking out. We don't want to work from home. We don't want to work from home. Then there's a pandemic, you have no choice in the matter, and then nobody wants to come back anymore. I know we're going to talk about that later, but then you suddenly change because you have no choice. But if I'd have tried to, when we see it now, are we coming back to work, are we not coming back to work, with such resistance, because it takes change, takes a long time.
When you talk about responsible leadership, I think also that, let's say environmental, social governance or diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging, it can't just be a conversation that the CEO and boardroom are having. It has to be embedded throughout the organisation as well. And yes, the CEO really needs to understand the positive impact that responsible leadership can have on their local community, their environment, their team, but also on their bottom line, what it means to their revenue, and whether it's revenue or cost savings or driving customer loyalty or team engagement. And then, as you mentioned, setting those longer term objectives, but having some clear actions below that the local teams themselves, your organisation can get on with, so that when there are short-term pressures, you can then focus on those short-term pressures, knowing that those actions are still taking place across your organisation.
And you've got an incredibly complex beast that you wrangle at Merlin Entertainments with regards to ESG, and we've been very grateful to be on the journey with you from some of the start of that as well. How do you kind of juggle that kind of profitability, the ESG agenda, the board engagement around what's next in a way where it can be prioritised properly? How have you been able to go around that with, to give you an example, Merlin Entertainments has lots of different types of venues and attractions which touch upon quite a complex range of ESG areas.
Right. And those things are always changing. We've got aquariums and zoos as well. There's always that conversation about keeping animals in captivity and the importance that we talk about the conservation messaging there, and that's going to become even more important as time moves on. But talking about those setting objectives, there's one of our objectives around caring for the planet and reducing our water usage by 2030. So that's our overall objective. But those individual businesses all have their individual actions. For instance, when we're building new theme parks or zones in theme parks, adding landscaping that reduces the amount of water that it uses, or when you're refreshing toilets, for instance, adding waterless urinals, those smaller actions that the teams can get on with and get on and do. And then within your teams, again, it's no point just me going out there and talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. I do need to bring those teams along, and we have some really passionate people within our teams. And, that's one of the reasons why I've worked with Merlin for so long. And we call them champions, but these are people who aren't paid any extra on top of their daytime jobs. These are the ones that are passionate about green, or passionate about accessibility, or passionate about diversity and inclusion. And we work with those people on coming up with initiatives and keeping the conversation moving, and ensuring that actually when there are, say, those are short-term pressures on driving revenue and cost saving, these conversations are still happening.
Amazing. And where do you think the role with regards to, because, leadership now is different to what it's ever been before. And, people aren't really taught about all of the things that they need to be across now. No. It's quite varied areas of expertise, which can be quite disjointed, difficult to put into strategy, different to what has been done previously. How are you going around kind of building that literacy within your organisation, within your teams, and getting people to understand it properly above and beyond, well, this is a buzzword. If we ask a lot of people, well, what does carbon emissions mean? A lot of the time they don't have a clue. Well, this, that, the other. So how are you going around it in a way where it builds authentic engagement, that people really kind of, even if they don't understand it in its depth, can engage, like the champions that you've got, for example. How did you go around that?
I mean, if we look at some of our initiatives, it has come down from for instance, people just want to celebrate. First thing is celebrating. People want to celebrate events, whether it's Pride Month, International Women's Day, International Men's Day, and that gets the conversation starting because there are things you can actually actually focus on and start and have those initiatives, I suppose, to drive that throughout your business. And then you start getting into the nitty-gritty of some of the more detail. And again, you're not going to have everyone in your team that's going to be interested or want to get involved, but there will be people that actually say, okay, we're doing this, but what are our policies now that back this up? You can talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, but unless you've got any real policies that impact the team within your business, that it's not going to go any further. So I think you need to have the policies, the champions in place, and you need to have your leaders buy in on when it comes to responsible leadership and understanding, again, the benefits of doing that. I think that they're some of the key priorities.
I agree with that. You've got to walk the talk as well, like you're saying with the leadership. I always say to my team, the fish rots from the head down. As leaders, we have to walk that talk.
I could literally smell that.
Could you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think,
Pungent.
It's so important. It's so important that we don't just talk about it. We actually actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, and I can't. I mean, it's and I think make it relatable. Right. I think sometimes we're very passionate about something and we don't get why somebody else doesn't get and understand it. So I think having those examples and those stories that you can share in a way that somebody understands it. So it's I talk a lot on the diversity, equity, inclusion narrative, and I think that there's different approaches that work for different people. And I think when you talk about it in a sense of often I'll use a sporting analogy, growing up in the UK and, watching football in the UK and, in the 70s and 80s, and all the teams were the same, right? They were all working class men from the local town. And then it was a football league that decided they wanted to create the best football league in the world. And to go do that, they wanted to get the best players, the best coaches, and that's what they did. But they recognised that you couldn't go and get Ronaldo and plonk him in Nottingham and expect him to be really great. You had to understand his culture, his diet, his food, his religion, and create an environment where he could thrive. And now you've got the English Premier League, which is the best league in the world. Yeah. But that didn't happen overnight. That was a 10, 15-year strategy. Yeah. When you talk and bring those examples that people can understand, then the penny drops. And, and that whole, to your question, Anna, in regards to how you create, the link between, financial responsibility, leadership responsibility, and some of those policies, that creates that bridge and understanding around it makes good business sense. I'm not just saying it, I'm going to give you some examples of it making good business sense.
I love
basically
that.
Ted Lasso is what you were saying. Yeah, are we talking about Ted Lasso here? Because that's literally, and they did it in 2 seasons. So, hurry up. Sorry, go on.
On that piece, though, the lived experience is really valuable. And a lot of our champions that I spoke about are actually people that have got lived experiences, whether it's for accessibility needs. A lot of our champions on the accessibility team are people that do have difficulty accessing some of our attractions. And they're the ones that are coming up to us in the first place and say, we should be looking at this, we should be looking at that, and that really drives people to buy in and start putting words into action. There's another one we have, an LGBTQI global chat group, which is many countries where we have attractions, the LGBTQI community is very safe. But some of our countries, often in some of the APAC regions, you can't talk about it. So some of these chat groups are their best way of reaching out to other people, just to have someone else to talk to. I think that lived experience is really valuable when trying to drive initiatives around responsible leadership.
That's really amazing to hear. And it's interesting because a lot of people don't join the dots between work from home and diversity, equity, inclusion as well. Because for people with chronic conditions and a multitude of things, work from home actually opened up a whole world to people who wouldn't have had access to a lot of things before. You think about COVID, when everyone worked from home, for a lot of people that was inconvenient, but for some people it was like, whoa, finally they can access the world. So let's talk about work from home, because we're like, should we? Shouldn't we? And I know a lot of CEOs that are like, we are, and everyone's like, no, we're not. And we're needing to find these middle grounds that work based on the practicalities of operations of any of these businesses. So, flexibility is required for sure now, but the pressure's intensifying. Whilst some argue for return to the office to foster collaboration, others see flexible models as the future. What does this mean for leadership? Where are we going to be in 10 years' time if we're not all androids just marching around communicating through our brains, which is a possibility.
And I don't think there's a one size fits all, right? I think, you know, it's going to be different for different organisations at different times. You know, to your point, you know, there's a challenge. It's an opportunity for some people, but you know, if I think of my own experience, I feel for people coming into a business for the first jobbers.
Yep.
Like when I think about, you know, my, you know, the start of my career and how much I learned and relied on just the chatter around, overhearing conversations, listening on phone conversations, you know, and that was like, you know, as an incidental, you know, professional development plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, we've got to get smarter and think creatively how we create those channels in those pathways, and that safety in lack of knowledge for people coming into the workplace for the first time. I often think about first jobbers.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
I do, and the feeling of belonging as well. I don't know about you, but when I go to work, I like to have a team of people who when we work hard, we have fun as well. We have a laugh. We talk about our weekends, talk about our families, what we did. And it's you're not just there doing the work, you actually have a relationship with the people you sit with every day. And that, certainly when I think about the COVID times, was the hardest bit, because you don't have the same conversations over a Zoom. It just doesn't happen the same way. And so that's the challenge that I have. I think, how do we get this belonging? How do we get the camaraderie? How do we get all the fun bits of work alongside the culture and the important bits of collaboration and the flexibility? For me, this is the hardest challenge for any CEO today and probably for the future.
I think, I think one of the challenges for CEOs will be actually how they provide opportunities and platforms for everyone to get together and collaborate and share learnings and celebrate and connect. And we have to be quite specific on routine times in the office, and then really setting, I suppose, clear guidelines of what your flexible working policy means. It doesn't necessarily have to mean half and half, you know, half in the office, half at home. Do you have specific days where everyone is in together so you can do exactly what you have been talking about? You know, I also think that the working from home policy is a great benefit for team members, and I think people will look for that in the future. It's a shame we're having these conversations now about removing it. I think it does play a part, especially, you know, I work from the office every day, but I'm lucky I have my own office, and it takes me 10 minutes on the moped to get into work. But, you know, if you're having to then balance a family or you know, with just life, I think if we can make it easier for our team to get their jobs done, then great. But there does need to be some guidelines set around it. And the other thing, I think, if you know, some of these conversations that are happening around the reasons why people need to go back to work. If you've got a team who genuinely feel valued and understand their business vision and strategy and understanding what impact they have to that business strategy, then they're going to do their work whether they're at home or in the office. But it does open that question up about, you know, first employee question you mentioned. That's a great thought. What happens to those where we all learn on the job? We all learn how to lead great people on the job. You don't do it sat behind a computer. So that's you're right, going to be a difficult conversation.
Yeah. I think it's just being mindful of it, isn't it? You know, it's, you know, there has to be a consideration around that. But yeah, it's not an easy one.
No, I think it will be interesting for the different generations. Think about my kids. I have three teenage boys, and they spend a lot of time online doing things on the computer, playing games on the computers and things like that. They do go out as well, but I think when they're starting work and they're entering the workforce, is it expected that they will be back behind the computers? You know, whereas I've always gone to the office all my life, or gone to my place of work all my life, they may not have that. So
and are we healthy and well being behind computers all day? Are we well? You know, I was out swimming the other day and I heard somebody sitting on a surfboard and they were like, I've got a Zoom call in 2 minutes. And I just thought, well, they're healthy and they're well. Like, you know, and also if they can get to that Zoom call, I was watching them for about 10 minutes. Like, are they going to be late? What's going on? Yeah. So I'm going to follow up on that. I've been trying to find them ever since. But, you know, why? I suppose it's about, as the CEOs and the leaders, knowing why are you asking people to come into the office? Have you consulted with the team? What actually are their needs versus what the requirements are of the operations of the business? Is it about trust? Is it about culture? You know, is it the worst thing for them to be in their own worlds doing their work and then come in and collab because they can't get any work done when they're in the same space anymore anyway? I suppose again, there's no one size fits all, but if you understand why you're doing something and everybody else does, surely there would be a little bit less resistance to that. Do you think?
Well, I've been reading about this, and it was talking about working from home. You need a different kind of employee. You need a results-focused employee because you can't see them, you can't sit with them, you can't help them because you're not there. You know, they're behind a screen miles away. So you're going to employ somebody who's a results-driven, a results-oriented person. So then you're not going to get your first jobbers because them people have not had the experience yet to get the results you need from someone who's perhaps got 5 years under their belt who can do it.
But doesn't that sit in leadership and trust as well, how we work with people?
Yeah, but how it's more difficult. I'm sure there's a way to help bring someone along, but if they're sat in Wollongong and you're sat in Sydney and you're both behind a computer, it's really difficult, isn't it? It's doable, but it's harder.
Like even now, I've got a relatively small agency, and we're all pretty much remote. We've got an office, and they come when they're in Sydney or when they're here from overseas. It's not mandated, but we even say when we get together, how much more we get because just it is that conversation, and then you'll hear someone say something on the phone, and that will trigger something else. But it's not saying we don't need to do that all the time. And I think it's maybe there is to your point, Anna, it might just be different roles. It makes a lot more sense than other roles. But I think it's a really challenging leadership area that I'm not sure anyone's got the complete.
And sometimes it's about the emotional intelligence of the leader, and you don't know how somebody is really unless sometimes you're in their energy, you're in their vibe, you're picking up on how they're doing. And we did see a big increase in depression and anxiety related conditions, especially going back out into the public. I mean, a lot of introverts are living the best life working from home, but the extroverts maybe are really struggling, and anybody in between, not to put everybody in boxes, you might be a bit of both. So I think the reality of it is, we don't know yet, do we?
No. And think about what happened during the lockdown, certainly for our poor colleagues in Melbourne. They were the most locked down place on the planet or something. Yep. And then they really suffered.
Yeah, they did. I remember that.
I know, my friends and colleagues.
They're still struggling, as a result.
And so, and there's no one size fits all. That's definite.
Would you like to play another game?
Yes.
Oh, go on.
Okay, right. So we've got another game while we're talking about CEO translations and everybody doing it their own way, called CEO Translations. So I'm going to give you some standard CEO sentences, and I want you to translate them to what you think they actually mean. Are you ready?
Go on.
1. Let's take a step back.
Shut up.
Yeah. All your ideas are ridiculous. Let's start again.
We have no idea what we are doing. Number 2, let's explore all options.
They don't like what you're saying.
Yeah,
I don't like any of the current options. Number 3, let's circle back on that.
Never to be spoken about again.
I'm hoping you forget about this. Number 4, we are relocating resources.
Cost cutting, definitely.
Yeah.
We're cutting your budget. Number 5, we encourage work-life balance.
But we don't like it.
We're going to call you at midnight, and that's fine.
Please take your laptop on holiday with you. And number 6, I will take that offline. Let's take that offline.
Oh, that's never going to be spoken about ever again.
I won't be in touch.
No.
Luckily for us, that's not how you CEOs operate, is it?
No, I hope
Do you
not.
say any of these words?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's natural, isn't it? Yeah. Well, you did very well. Who did the best out of that, actually? I think it was you.
We all won.
You did, because I've got a prize.
Oh, it was me.
Look at this now, showing the true colours. Okay, wait a minute. Do you want to know what the prize is first?
Yeah, what is it?
Okay. You've won yourself a Bambuddha t-shirt.
Oh, guess
Working kind. Working kind. Nobody wants it anymore. Charming. All right, there you go. You've got it. Congratulations. Well done, Luli.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, back to serious grown-up business.
Okay.
So, next up, we're going to talk about the future of work. We were talking about your sons before. How do you balance flexibility with fostering connection, innovation, and trust in the organisation, because all of you spoke about it earlier, and we had some really good chats before. I wish we'd started rolling before we actually started rolling today.
Well, you're saying it's been rubbish since.
I mean, we're getting better as we go through.
You should have heard a 1:45. No.
Yeah. So we're talking about the different generations now that are in leadership and within organisations, and everybody's different perspectives of trust, boundaries, work-life balance, and the flexibility that's required. How are the future leaders going to need to balance that? You know, if we're looking at 10 years into the future, what is that kind of responsible leader going to be like, and how are they going to operate?
I mean, for me, and I think, I know for myself, my health is really important. Training for me is really important. I cycle still. That's what this is all about, by the way. But
you did have a little fall.
I had a little stack. I fell off my bike. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's fun. Like half of our office is a gym. I'll go in and I'll train every morning. I ride my bike every morning. Lunch is I block out my lunch time. I stop and I have lunch. And I think, when you demonstrate those behaviours yourself, then it encourages others. And so I'm not saying that needs to be your routine and your pattern, but I get we've all got things that are important to us to do in the day for us to perform and be the best. Yeah. And I think, getting that sort of balance and understanding and encouraging people to talk about these, then it hopefully, I mean, the idea is it does give that balance that's needed to navigate through the challenging landscape that we live in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Leading by example and showing what good looks like, and you're taking time to do what's right for you. And I think it's about balance in another way as well. We need to give and take what our team members need, and we need to give and take what the company needs. Because we're together, because we're part of an organisation, that we need to make sure that it's a commercial success in order for the organisation to grow, which then gives us the money to do the things we love. So sometimes when the chips are down, we've got to pull all-nighters and things. Hopefully they're not every day. That shouldn't be it all the time. And by the same token, we give flexibility when people need to go and do things that's good for them too. So I think
compromise.
Compromise on both sides. The company has to give, and the employees have to give, and then together we can work together in a better space.
Yeah, I love that.
Ian, what are you thinking?
I really like that compromise. I think at Merlin ANZ, we do something simple, like finished work on a Friday at 3 p.m. because I know all my team who work in the back office functions, we call them, all do over their hours, and then they're getting paid for, and they do it to get the job done. And so that finishing at 3 p.m. is such a small thing for me, but actually people really genuinely love it. And when we talked about changing, they don't know it's a benefit that we really like to have. And whether you do finish at 3 or not, it doesn't matter. But just finishing early on a Friday kind of really means something to them. But I think back to my point around building connections, we're going to have to be, leaders are going to have to be stronger at ensuring there's opportunities for team to build connections and making sure that is valued by all the leaders, and that we encourage, I suppose, cross-function collaboration, and don't be the blocker of communication. You don't have to get everything go through you as a leader. You've got to encourage those idea sharing or that solution finding. You've got to encourage your teams to work together on that. And that point about empowering team and trusting team, again, you be very clear on what the expectations are, and then set regular routine meetings to get updates and reset. I think that's going to be key if you're not seeing all your team on a regular basis. And there's also a couple other things. I think good leaders take this for granted, but the ability to listen and really listen to your team, I think we're going to have to do more of that, reaching out to those people who have got quiet voices or who will stay quiet on virtual calls because they don't have to say anything. And often you'll slowly just lose their input into your business, and they'll start feeling less value. So we've got to do a great job at, even if they're virtual calls, making sure everyone on that call is having an opinion and getting their chance to say something.
Oh, these are juicy answers. So, we're all talking about, and we've got these common themes: communication, trust, respect, compromise around leadership and teams, and especially intergenerational ways of working. But where does, psychological safety sit in that? Because if we look at, the hierarchy of general well-being innovation and a multitude of models, psychological safety is the foundation for us to be able to trust each other, which will take us nice and neatly into DEI conversations in a second. Where do you start with that, with regards to that psychological safety, when you have got big teams, diverse teams?
Yeah.
We asked the question, actually. We have an employee survey that goes out every year, and one of the questions is around, can you speak up without fear of negative consequences? And that score was lower than where I was hoping it would be, so there's definitely a problem. And so we actually just met up with loads of people within our teams and just said, what do we need to do, and why do you not feel safe? Why is there not a psychologically safe working environment? And there were some simple things like, and we're talking about people that work in the front line of our attractions, serving guests and so on. Little things like, I'm scared to speak up in case my supervisor reacts in a way and stops giving me shifts. Things that, when you're sitting in the board, that doesn't even come into your head. Yeah. These are the things that are impacting your team, and this is the reason why you're not getting feedback from your frontline team about all the initiatives you're trying to roll out. So you've got to provide forums for feedback. And one of there were 10 initiatives that came from this I suppose survey, and one of them was they want more forums for feedback, and they want people to do stuff with that feedback and not just listen, and they want people to react to it and make changes from it. So I think as leaders, we have to ensure that we're reaching all levels of our organisation and really listening to them and then putting into actions the things that really stop them from speaking up. Mm.
I saw you flinch when you heard about the employee survey, Luli.
Yeah, but no. I because you said, and it's the doing something with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
And I think it's I definitely have some sort of reaction to many employee surveys I've been involved, back in the day. And then you just lose trust in it because nothing ever happens. You don't hear anything. Yeah. You take the time, don't hear anything. So, but the action.
It's interesting what you said, but when you got the results of the survey and it was lower than you expected, and I've been in a similar situation in the past as well, where you think, well, I speak up all the time and I'm really authentic, and so I think everyone's going to do that, and then they don't, or you think they are doing, because you do hear quite a lot of feedback, but there's many people saying they don't feel safe to do that. And it's a shocker, actually. As the leader, you're like, why? And then when you dig deeper into it, you can find out maybe they're not afraid to speak to you, they might be afraid to speak to others, or like you say about the supervisor, might not give them something. Some of it's perception. Oh, well, 15 years ago somebody spoke up and they got fired, but that was 15 years ago in a very different situation. So there's lots of myths or misconceptions, but to the person it's real.
Oh, 100%.
And it's how you overcome it.
And actually it is real, because, your reality is real, but also the biggest things that we get feedback about, because, we've accidentally at Bambuddha become this place where people call us when stuff's going down, and we can connect them confidentially with whoever for support and help. But about power imbalance, whether there is an awareness or a lack of awareness, some leaders are aware or unaware of, dynamics that might occur which create psychologically unsafe environments. And, if the only way to feed back is an anonymous survey, which you might not 100% believe might be anonymous, or, what other mechanisms are there out there which can enable somebody to have a voice if they haven't been heard, or if they don't trust the mechanisms that are in place, or they are unable to interact? Is there anything else that any of you are doing, or you've put in place, or of other organisations that have put in place that you think could be good to consider?
I mean, that's one of the big initiatives with tech diversity with the foundation, the Tech Reflect study. It's independent. We're working with organisations and individuals to give them a voice, to identify, but also, to share, their feelings, on big matters in the workplace. And I think, you're right, and I think, it's there's a trust element sometimes within organisations around sharing personal information and not knowing where it's going or who's going to use it and how personal is it, how anonymous is it. So I think sometimes, whether with Bambuddha Group or independent organisations outside of the environment, partnering with them, there's a different degree of trust in that channel sometimes. So not to say in tech diversity with Bambuddha, you do a lot of work around that area as well. And I think there's a lot of merit in getting that real, true understanding of the workforce by working with an independent body.
And it's a risk agenda as well. So we find certainly things are getting a little bit easier to get put on the boardroom table and get signed off with regards to strategy, especially because you've got, psychological safety standards you now need to make sure you've got in place, and risk and so on and so forth around a multitude of things. But, it's not easy, and it does take a little bit of time. And also having the infrastructure in place to be able to quickly work out, is this because this person doesn't have the tools to communicate? Or is this because there is a power imbalance and a psychologically unsafe dynamic going on here? Yeah. So building that literacy and awareness and having the tools to be able to navigate those risks is, probably one of the best ways we've seen it done. Again, having those third-party bodies where people can go and report to that, you've actually put in place, but are still keeping that autonomy and anonymous. I know that there's a few out there that are already doing that, organisations, and we'll drop some in the chat after this as well. So it isn't easy and it is a bit heavy, but would you like to play another game? Yeah. Just a little one, just to shake it off, because that was we need to shake it off after that one. So this is called responsible or ridiculous leadership.
Okay.
Okay.
How do we play?
So you have to tell me if you think this example is an example of responsible or ridiculous.
Is there a prize?
There is a prize.
You can't win it again.
I have another T-shirt.
Okay. CEO moves into the office to prove their commitment to the company.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I mean, it's up to you. There's no answer here. Okay, banning emails and switching to only voice notes to stream communication.
No. Ridiculous.
Okay. Swapping salaries with an entry-level employee for a year.
Ah.
Oh.
I don't think it's responsible. I think the entry-level employee would like it. My son would love it.
They're going to be like, Viva Las Vegas!
Exercise to do on paper, though, isn't it? Just to really understand what salary differences are and what it how it impacts your life.
Yeah, because people soon forget once they're getting into more senior positions. Okay, mandatory company-wide karaoke every Friday. Is it team bonding? Or is it a workplace hostage situation?
Oh my goodness.
I think it's bonding, but you might have to have a bit of wine or something to lubricate.
I can't think of any worse, but I can't sing. So, and I've heard
that's the whole point, though.
I've heard some of my colleagues sing.
I don't want that to ruin my weekend. Can actually sing.
And they're singing "My Heart Will Go On," which is an 8-minute song, by the way.
Brilliant.
Your favourite?
No, absolutely not. Okay, board meetings must happen in the wilderness. Board meetings must be done outside.
You were talking about having meetings, not you personally, in the sauna.
Well, it wasn't me, but I do know of people who have had meetings in the sauna, yes, in Europe.
In Europe.
Interesting.
It's more acceptable in Europe to be in the actual...
And the cost of living is very high now, so it's easy just to all snuggle into a sauna than pay your electric bill going on in Europe at the minute. Yeah.
You don't have any clothes on.
Yeah, no, it's not all right, yeah. I probably won't turn that one.
Outside, though, is not a bad idea.
Yeah, connect to the earth.
Yeah, get rid of distractions.
Have it on a surfboard. She might have had that Zoom meeting while she was out there on a...
You never know. You never know.
Thank you for participating in the shenanigans. Okay, we haven't got a massive amount of time left, so I am going to take us into DEI, the future of DEI. To DEI or not to DEI? It's all going down. And we're not going to go into a massive amount of intensity in this, and I'll tell you why. Because it's extremely polarised at the moment, and there's a lot of people really struggling with this topic. And we want to create a safe space, a positive space for hope and optimism for the next chapter. The reality of it is, lots of different types of people live on this planet, and we coexist, we work, we live, we thrive together. But what are we going to do with regards to the DEI agenda for the next chapter, and why is it important for business and organisations with regards to thriving? Should it even be called DEI anymore? Like, where are we sitting with it now?
It's such an interesting one. I think I see parallels with, this happens all the time, right? When I first moved to Australia, so 20-something years ago, I remember it was the age of green IT. And I remember, this guy used to come to his council meeting Lee, trying to get everyone on board with green IT. Then the name changed to sustainability, and now it's ESG, right? And but it didn't get the value, the business impact until they could start measuring cost savings by adopting some of these methodologies. And then all of a sudden, Lee was top dollar and had a seat at the board table. I think DEI will go through a similar transition or evolution. And I think it's been a concern of mine for quite some time that we'd get to this point of the polarization, and then that through poor leadership leading to really radical decisions. Because I think the narrative needs to be around representation. To your point, we're talking about creating workforces which are more representative of society, more representative of the client base that we serve. If we get that representation in the business, we're going to be more successful. It's that simple. Yeah. So it's actually a narrative and a conversation for everybody to participate in. And I think we've kind of lost that, maybe along the way sometimes by going, it's that simple. We're talking about representation, end of.
Plus one to what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does it look like when we're looking 10 years ahead? How are we embedding it into long-term strategy for the next chapter?
I think businesses need to understand where they're at the moment. It's not necessarily about always measuring everything, but where do you see it when it comes to gender diversity or sexuality or ethnicity, and why does that matter to you? And then really, where do you want to get to? And so when we first started looking at this in Erling, we're like, well, actually, where do we want to get to? And we wanted to have a team of people in the UK, for instance, that the ethnicity reflects the guests that we've got coming through the door.
There you go.
It can't all just be white, whether male or female, because that's not our guest mix, and we want to better reflect that. And so understanding where you are and also targets. And if you're stuck at home and we're looking at how do I know what my targets are, look at best practice, look at government, work with like Bambuddha and third parties that can really hold your hand during this process. But for it to stick, you need to have policies behind your words, as I mentioned earlier. We have policies around people who are going through transitioning, and that will impact such a small amount of people of my team, maybe no one. But if there's someone in that team who are really struggling, they don't feel like they belong, they don't feel like they can be their authentic self at work, and we can help them in a way by making something easier for them, so they do feel a sense of belonging. Surely that's a good thing. Because in the end, it doesn't matter where you are, what type of person you are. It's about trying to allow you to be who you want to be at work and have that sense of belonging. Because I just think that's a much more positive working culture to have than not talk about it.
And I think this is the challenge we've got at the moment is the fear of being cancelled. And I speak to lots of friends about this who are in this space. Is if we're constantly in a state of fear, we're constantly below the line. We're in a fight or flight response. We're worried that we'll say the wrong thing. We might not have a lot of awareness around this or a lived experience about that or knowledge about that. But we're seeing and we're hearing from older white guys that are seriously depressed, struggling with so many things because they just don't know how to show up right now for the next chapter. Every move they make are getting in bother for. But then we're still seeing extreme exclusion at the other scale across the board, from senior leadership right down to organisation. And a lot of that comes with a lack of psychological safety again, a lack of a training and awareness, because actually you don't know what you don't know until you don't know that you don't know it. But also,
or that you need to know it.
Yeah,
it's words like this isn't anything new. I think the narrative or the acronym is relatively new to a lot of people. And then now, because what's happening in the US, it's become even more relevant. Known to a lot more people. But you're right, and I think the education bit and giving people time and space to make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're going to get it wrong. People are going to make mistakes. It's not necessarily always intentional, and I think that's been lost along the way sometimes as well. But I think there's some really because a lot of the time the lens of diversity is so narrow. We're looking at it most of the time, a lot of time from a gender point of view, and we might have some other groups in there. That it's companies, and I have to give a plug to Diversity Atlas, which is an incredible platform.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
To help organisations understand who they are beyond gender. Like the data sets that sit behind it. So if you're a First Nations person in Australia, your mob will be in there, your dialect will be in there. So for companies to go through that experience and their employees to have that experience of participating in a survey like that, you suddenly realise how rich a tapestry of diversity you have in your organisation that you didn't even consider. Because you're only looking at it through so few lenses. And the warmth of that experience for everybody to then be able to celebrate it. You're actually getting to celebrate. And then you can use that to inform a strategy for change and measure along it. And I think it's something that should be celebrated, but you need to know and give people an opportunity to identify.
I just love everything you've just said. It actually makes me have goosebumps because it's so right. It is about celebration. And then we start putting KPIs to things, and we've got to have X% of female leaders and X% of this and X% of that. I find that the wrong way, because that's not celebrating, that's putting KPIs around things. You only got that job because you're female, you only got that job because you're this or because you're that. That's the wrong thing, in my opinion. But to celebrate the diversity that we have from whether in my organisation, we have many, many nationalities. It's amazing. I don't mind whether they're male,
And how do you
female.
know that I'm a that? And how do you know that I'm a this? And actually, I'm not going to tell you all of my intersectionality or anything about me until I'm comfortable. Like, can we just start with a cup of tea? Do you know what I mean?
Well, do you know, when I've just joined my new company, I've just joined 5 months ago, and I tried to meet with as many people as I could across the organisation. And I would ask, so tell me where you're from. And they tell me the country, they're all live in Australia now, of course, but where they're from. And I'm like, we should have like a day where we all bring our national dishes. Now, there is what day, Harmony Day. I didn't even realise at that time. We all bring our national dishes in and celebrate where we're from, where we originally came from. And I think, you can celebrate each other in so many different ways without KPIs. And I hate all that stuff.
And also
divisive.
Sorry, Ian.
I think that point on lived experiences again, I think just working with those team members who have those lived experiences. It's Ramadan coming up later this week, and we've got a number of our team that celebrate it and follow it. And for some of you don't really know, if you don't celebrate it, you don't know much information about it. So these people actually have come and just done some little interviews and talked about what it means to them, and for them it's all about family time. And it's like, oh wow, that all makes sense if someone you didn't know, if you didn't know about it before. But I think really, just having people share their experiences, because when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, it means so many different things for different people, and everyone has their own story. It's just, I suppose, providing opportunities to listen to those stories and learn from them.
And I couldn't agree more, because what I love about Diversity Atlas is it also picks up on what the influences have been in somebody's life. So you might sit into this box and that box and all of the boxes, but you might have been brought up by an Italian auntie next door and a Nigerian best friend's mum, and have been brought up in a completely different country and have all of these other influences. And those lived experiences bring a massive amount of knowledge, connection, richness, and strength to any organisation. But no one's going to, until you get to know someone and create a space where someone's comfortable, why are they going to share all those goodies with you? They're their goodies. So we're running out of time a little bit, but I just wanted to just whiz forward a little and just wrap things up a bit and get us thinking about, if you're going to pick your top priorities right now, I mean, you're all influential leaders, you use your sphere of influence and impact very well. It's remarkable what Merlin's achieved. It's remarkable what you've all achieved, especially Luli. I love watching your journey, and I'm a big fan in everything you do. And Allison as well, absolute boss. So you're all brilliant in your own ways, but what are your priorities for the next 10 years? Like, what if you were going to choose one or two things that you really think is going to be very, very important for responsible leadership 2035, and you as a leader, what would that look like?
I'll kick it off.
Yeah.
I will continue to be a human, not just a leader. I think it's important to be a person and be a true person. And humans make mistakes, humans sometimes fall over, but humans get up and they try again. And that's really important, to be kind, to be strong, to sometimes be unpopular, when you sometimes got to make the decisions that are not the popular decision, be curious and try and ensure success for everyone.
Beautiful.
That's what I'll commit
Do you want to hand that hot potato over to
Goodness gracious
Well,
me.
looks like she's ready there.
Goodness
with a
gracious
scratch.
me. Ian, over to you.
I think
Nicely
I
done.
think as leaders, we're in a very important place to continue this conversation, because if you stop talking about it, your business will stop talking about it. And we've got to continue to, even when times get tough and the conversations that are happening outside in the world at the moment, we have got to step up and got to speak up and talk about the importance of it. Again, going back to that point earlier, the importance of providing a workplace that is safe for everyone to be their authentic self and to encourage that feeling of belonging. Because, as I said, if we don't make that a priority, it will lose its way. And I think as a CEO, we've got to walk the talk. We've got to make sure the conversation is not just boardroom and everyone in your team understands it. And importantly, your leaders within your team also value the importance of responsible leadership.
Amazing.
I think celebration is definitely a part of it, but I want to positively impact as many people, organisations, businesses, children, artists, budding sports people as possible between now and then.
And I have no doubt you will. No more biking for a while. Let's get you there. We'll finish off before we do. We've got a couple of minutes left, and you can choose this, and this will be your last, chance to win the next prize. Worst leadership advice ever, or the best leadership advice ever? You can share one or the other.
Oh, that we've given or
That
been
you've
given?
received.
That I've received. Goodness gracious me. Don't be too black.
Wow.
Did you leave immediately?
No, I just went really black.
Well, actually,
Nice. Yes.
on that same thread, I was told that I'm not Asian enough.
What?
Oh, I can't compete with these things. I don't know now. These things are nothing. You have to come back to me. Give me a few moments to have a think.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, you won that T-shirt.
Did I?
Yeah, you won that T-shirt.
Can I share your T-shirt? You've got
You,
one of
you all win a T-shirt. I tell you
Mardi
what.
Gras this weekend.
You
I wanna
both just
wear
won a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. Wear it with pride. Working kind, leaders working kind. There you go.
Shall I pass it down? There you go.
There you go. So you've all won a T-shirt. So we've had some really juicy conversations today, and we are completely running out of time. We are going to be doing these round tables into the future. So if you are a CEO, if you're a leader, and you'd like to feature in one of our up and coming round tables, we'd love to hear from you. I've been Anna Sheppard. I want to thank the 6am agency who have sponsored and partnered on this initiative, and we've got some amazing results as an outcome of that. Wesley Conference Centre, Sydney's best kept secret, bunch of absolute legends, amazing venue here with really high tech AV spec for events like this. We're holding a massive conference here later in the year with our friends over at Westpac as well. Hero Shop Photography, thank you for sponsoring us. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can download the Responsible Leadership White Paper free of charge from our website, and we'll be in touch very soon, encouraging you to take the pledge to be a responsible leader for 2035. On behalf of myself and everybody here, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being kind. Here's the final takeaways. Be kind. Listen to understand. Human connection is what really drives positive change. Understand your impact and influence as an individual and as an organisation. If you make mistakes, it's all right. Be kind to yourself. Don't go riding. Don't give too much autonomy, but lots of respect. Continue supporting the underrepresented in a way which is meaningful, authentic, and respectful. And remember to celebrate your milestones as you continue on over the next 10 years. Remember, we're humans, we're all trying our best, and we'll do a lot better together. Take care. Thank you for showing up today, and we'll see you again really soon.
Goodbye.